Yeah, Whittier, who knew? Maybe that should be the new city motto. Whittier, who knew? There's a lot going on here. Next up, we have Seeds of Knowledge, harvesting wild collected seeds. Pete Johnson's ecologist with the Tourette's National Forest. Is Pete here? Yep, there he comes. All right. While he's coming up, I just again want to thank our sponsors, the Exxon Valdez Oil Spill Trustees Commission, the Oil Spill Recovery Institute, the Prince William Sound Recreation Citizen Advisory Committee, the Tourette's Alaska Corporation, City of Whittier, and so forth and so on. So thank our sponsors. Got it?
All right. Thanks, Paul. Appreciate it. All right. I think seeds of change would have been better. Man, I tell you what, I blew it. All right, fair enough. Proprietary. Hi, everyone. My name is Pete Johnson. I'm an ecologist with the U.S. Forest Service. So maybe I'll just kind of give a little bit of background there. An ecologist is, you can have plant ecologists, wildlife ecologists. A lot of that is a study of the interaction of the different habitats and different microbiomes that we have basically all around us. And so today I want to talk to you guys a little bit about harvesting wild collected seed. And let's see here. Okay. Harvesting wild collected seed. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about when to collect it, some great species, why you're going to do it, how you're going to do it, how you're going to store it. But maybe the first thing I should ask, because I heard in a talk the other day, say it's a good idea to kind of understand who's in your audience and who's going to contradict you. So thanks, Zoe. Who here has done any seed saving, whether it's a garden or otherwise? Okay, definitely a few. How about wild collected seeds? Anyone collected their wild seeds? All right. Oh, awesome. Okay, well, I guess that's the end then. But no, we'll keep going. I think I've had an opportunity to do a lot of collections throughout the state, from north to south, east to west. A lot have been part of projects, whether they're for rehabbing or reclaiming mining areas, doing streambank restorations, and it's really important a lot of times to have that certain adapted varieties that we have here in Alaska, but are not necessarily commercially available. So often we see that too with our commercial varieties that we plant are not necessarily made for Alaska. But lucky for us is that we have beautiful plants and flowers that are surrounding us everywhere we walk. So maybe I'll start off with some of the benefits of what we're doing here with harvesting some of our native seed, right? And first easy one is, why would you do it? Because it's readily available, right? It's outside our doors, it's on our trails, it's in the places that we like to go to recreate. And also, like I had mentioned, it's adapted for our climate. It's really interesting is that you could go to a store today and you could purchase, so I think it's neat, hair grass, right? Deschampsia cespitosa. And that could be the same genus, same species, but it's grown down in Idaho. And you can go and buy it at the store, at a big box store, and you buy the exact same variety, or not the same variety, but the same genus, same species, and you plant it, and it's not meant to be here, right? And so we have this interesting conundrum that there's so many of these varieties that can be grown here to be able to stay here. And so that's why these ones are adapted for our climate. There's also, there was a study done, I think it was on Mount Rainier, and it talked about just the adaptability of plants. And they compared it for every 100 miles north that you would drive was the equivalent of 1,000 feet change in elevation. So you think about that, for every 100 miles you drive north, which works here in Alaska too, is the equivalent of going up 1,000 feet. Those plants have adapted for that. So that's why it's also very important to find these things that are adapted for our climate and for our specific biome, right? I mean, we all know very well that it's going to be a little bit drier in Anchorage than it may be around here, and these plants have adapted for that. So you're going to see those benefits there also. Some other benefits are that it lowers the risk of non-native escape. we see beautiful flower boxes, and we start to see those plants slowly creep out. That's majority of how a lot of our non-native invasive plants have snuck out of some of these flower boxes and crept into our backyards and taken over. But by going and selecting those native plants and hand doing it, right? So works best if you're not doing any mechanized harvesting. You're pulling it up, you're identifying the species you want, and there's no mix or mingling. Other benefits are when you come into a perennial growth habit. Just gonna give me 1 second. I'm gonna stretch this up so I don't have to keep leaning over so far. The perennial growth habit. I don't know about you guys, but I really like just doing something once and then not having to do it again, right? So let's get these plants out there that are perennials. You put them in, and they're there year after year, and everyone comes back and says, wow, your garden is so gorgeous. How do you keep it up? And it's like, well, it's a lot of hard work, but someone's got to do it. So that's one of the reasons we do it. And also, the reason we do this is it brings that area, that nature, into our own backyards. I mean, when you think about it, we're all going, we see these beautiful places, and we just can't believe the beauty that we see. We see flowers, and we're so just in awe of it. And we wish that we could bring it back with us. I won't name any names. We'll just call her Barbara L. And so this person and I were out, and we were in an area in the Sound, and we saw this really wonderful plant. And we thought, man, do you think this could survive in Girdwood? And the answer is maybe, but we're probably going to leave it because it just also happened to be a species that we're also studying to see if there was any possible decline. So we should probably leave it there. But if the idea is that if you had seed from that, that is something that you could bring back with you, right? And so we're able to keep these populations where they're meant to be, but also possibly take a little piece with us. And then every day during those summer months, if you were to propagate that seed and it grows, now you've been a benefit, you've improved that species, and you can look at it every day. So that's all fine and dandy, right? That's all the great parts of why we're going to harvest wild seed, and that's the end of it. But nope, there are some difficulties. But that's what makes it enjoyable also. If this was all a slam dunk, we'd all be doing this stuff. But what are some possible downfalls of this? Is that when we are out finding these native plants, these have not been selected multi-generations. They've not gone through all these criteria, so they're going to have variable germination rates. You can see this where you might harvest some seed, go through all the process we'll talk about a little bit, and then you plant it, and really you may have a total germination rate. If you're in the 35% of those seeds actually sprout, you're doing pretty good. I know that's in the past where you really have to set that bar low. That's another example of what Pete can teach you in life. Set that bar low. And also, harvest timing and processing. It's also difficult because wild collected seed is meant to survive in nature. It's not just out there to be harvested at an exact certain time, and it's all going to come to maturity at the exact same time. So you have to be watchful. You have to be mindful of it. I mean, maybe you're going to be outside a little more. Maybe you're out taking some more hikes. So there's kind of benefits to it. But that's a reality, is that where a few of these plants might be ready to harvest some of the seed right now, but some aren't. So they don't all come into germination or maturity at the same time. Some other things to think about is the site location of these species and how you're going to plant them, right? If you're going to plant something that you harvested out from like a marsh or a bog, and you're trying to plant it in an upland area in your yard, well, then you're just going to be fighting it the whole time. So that's something to think about, is where you're harvesting it, if it matches where you want to put it. So like in my yard, which basically is a bog, that would work out perfectly, right? I think that, like right now, I think my third favorite plant on the forest right now is this really cool sedge, Carex paciflora. It looks like a little mini windmill. And I really thought this season I'm going to make it a point to try to collect some of that seed and see if I could get some in my yard. Because how cool would that be if I had Carex pocket flora growing right outside in my yard, and every time I mowed it, I would just be so happy just watching that stuff. But it'd be really cool to see. And also the same goes for alpine plants. One of those things about reaching those upper elevations is we're looking out and we find some cool alpine azalea or something up there, and you're like, man, I wish I could have that outside my window every day. Well, it may not necessarily work. So those are some things to think about. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't try. Just kind of keep it realistic. I've also been hearing a little bit. I've been really excited to see some of these maps that we've been looking at, see all the different land status. It's really great to see kind of how all the different management areas are all blending into this area that we like. So this might kind of be my disclaimer too, is to make sure that as I'm up here with my shield and stuff on, I'm talking about on Forest Service land. So I'm not promoting you maybe to go on your neighbor's property necessarily and harvest all their seed off there. So keep that in mind. And so now saying that, I think I'm free from any lawsuits. And so to just make sure that you are where you're supposed to be. Real quick, I want to talk about this grass here is polar grass. This is an interesting grass that actually is grown commercially in state. And the interesting thing about this is that this can be used for oil remediation cleanups. So I was thinking about that when Mary Ann was talking a little bit. I'm like, oh man, if only we had some polar grass out there, we'd be able to clean up some of these areas. So not only do these plants have beauty, but they also provide so many different ways for us to improve our environment when it in itself is just a native species. The other reasons that we would do this is, and are some species easier than others, right? When I say easier, I guess we could think, is it easier for harvesting, easier for growing? And that's kind of something we're all going to be kind of figuring on your own. This is all just one big science experiment. I've been doing this for a long time, but it's always one big science experiment. It doesn't matter if you're trying to grow grass on a bunch of rock out near Noatak, or if you're trying to work on cleaning up some tundra up on the slope, or if you're down in Girdwood. It's all going to be a little bit different. It's always a science experiment. And as far as ornamental qualities, some of these grasses that we can harvest, which you're going to be able to get a lot more seed off of a lot of these plants, and they have that ornamental, like if you've seen some of those, I think that I've even heard calamus, just like we know the blue joint reed grass, and in some places I think it's called ornamental ribbon grass. So it's all about your branding. But obviously someone thinks that this is a really cool variety to have. And so between that and some of the sedges, I think it's just incredible, all these different grasses, and especially when you really start to drill down on them. Well, and Kim was talking yesterday, and if you got a chance to see that talk, it was great. She was talking about a lot of the harvesting of the native plants, and be careful to look alike. So this is probably also one of my disclaimers, is that with all the different plants that we have out there, just to make sure you know what you're doing as far as getting one that's toxic. I've seen a number of times, and I think that a fair amount of us in here are some sourdoughs. I don't know if I'm quite there, but getting close. I've seen them where they come into state and they've been playing sword fight with some of the cow parsnip or pushki or something like that, and oof, boy, that looks rough, right? So you really got to be careful. And if you don't know, ask. I think it's a great thing. Is it's a lot easier to learn from other people's mistakes. I make that a point every day to learn from other people's mistakes, but to know what you're looking for. Also, ethical harvesting. I think there's the idea too is that when you start pulling seed, I'm guilty of this too, is when it's good, it's really good. And you start gripping and ripping and you're pulling that seed and you're filling up your pillowcase. And then you start thinking to yourself, maybe I better take a couple steps to the left. So I'll put that in there too, is to make sure that we're leaving some to perpetuate that species. There's also tree and shrub species that are great for harvesting. everything. Well, I don't think I need any more alders in my yard, but definitely birch seed is a great way. And also some of these cones that we pull off here. It's just a great way to be able to harvest this plant without taking the plant out, pulling these seeds off and pulling them out of cones. And I'll get to the processing in a little bit. It's like right now, how to harvest and process. One of the things is when I mentioned that some of these plants come into maturity at different levels is when to determine they are ready, right? How in the world do you know if this is ready to go? And the easy answer is to go out and check. And how do you do that? Grass seeds, it's easily as kind of beating it against your hand. If that starts to come off, then you know it's ready. You really don't want to have to pull too hard on this stuff because then hasn't reached that maturity level. By hand or mechanization, you can see this is actually, I'm trying to think where this is at. I think this is out in western Alaska, and it looks like we're harvesting some cotton grass. And cotton grass is a species that's really cool. Actually, in the Sound Copper River Delta, you see the Areophorum russeolum, and it just forms fields similar to this. That's why I was trying to figure out if this was out there or out west. But it's just incredible. And when you go to pull it and it's perfect, it should come off really easily. So that's one other thing is that people might harvest a whole bunch of it, but if it hasn't reached that maturity yet, it's not going to want to come off. So getting out there and checking on it, it may take periodic trips. And then by hand or mechanization. Part of this also is if there's anyone in here that's kind of a DIY person that can really come up with stuff. I don't know if you guys ever watch Red Green, but boy, that guy can come up with any type of contraption there ever was. And this is your opportunity. I've seen people harvesting fireweed with a leaf blower that they spun a motor around, and they were using a hose and then pantyhose on the end of it, and they were sucking up fireweed, and they were so proud of themselves with this invention they'd created, and that might have been half the fun. Any number of ways that you can think to pull this stuff off, people have either tried or left it up to you to figure it out. And that also goes into tools of the trade. So some of these things are things that we've made, but there are also is equipment out there. So once you've really got the bug for this, we're going to have to get some additional equipment. So this is not for carrying water. This is a sieve that we're going to use, and it's a great way to separate seeds from chaff. You can actually, but one other thing you notice is that it's basically a window screen. These are things that we can find and modify and buy and just make it easier on ourselves to be able to process some of the seed. Other tools of the trade, like I said, the one on the right is actually a blender. That we've done is we've dipped in the blades into some tool dip. And that way, when it spins, it's able to break apart that chaff a little bit and then be able to separate it out. The one on the left is about one of the oldest contraptions there is, and it's just a box fan, and you're basically winnowing is the term for it. Separating the chaff from the grain or whatever would be winnowing. Drying seed. This is also one of the big problems that we have is there's so many people that want to harvest this seed and then throw it directly in the freezer. But unfortunately, it's so packed with water that it destroys the seed. So making sure that we have some way, whether it's putting on these screens, this is an instance where we actually have harvested all the seed. You put it in pillowcases, which is a great way to store seed because it allows airflow. And then we're forcing air up through these bags to dry them out. So that's another big proponent too. Store the seed until your shirt is really dry. Store it in brown paper bags. Store it in cotton pillowcases. I mean, just plain white cotton pillowcases. You can buy 1 million of them, and that's a great way to store seed. Keep it cool, keep it dark. It doesn't necessarily have to be frozen all the time, right? You might have to do a little of that for some scarification, which we'll talk about, or some cold stratification, but that's a great way to keep seed. Some other ways on how to break dormancies. I would mention that stratification is you do it by cold, and that's why you see people putting it in the freezer, right? This seed has to go through a period of being cold before it can come out of dormancy. I've planted some sedge like basically 2 years ago, and just happened to leave it kind of outside to see what it would do. First year, wasn't real great. And I just noticed this spring, the second season, that now it's all sprouting out of there. So what I thought was going to be like really poor germination just probably hadn't had that cold stratification that it needed. Fertilizer in Alaska, as far as for native plants, save your money. These plants have been adapted for the soils in which they're in. So you don't have to add all that. Actually, that's a great way to promote weeds in your yard, is if you're trying to make a little native plant garden and adding fertilizer to it, is weed seeds are going to eat all that fertilizer up, but our native plants are going to be adapted for the soil that they're in. As far as planting depth goes, I mean, this one is, you can almost plant the majority of these species on the soil surface. These are not cultivated crops, so they're just going to be, imagine how they'd be falling in nature. There's that tendency to want to stick your finger down there and drop the seed in there. This is not the case for here, so we don't have to worry about that as much. I'll also put a plug in there, as some folks that have been saving your seed, is you can do your own selective breeding. Once you have established the plants that do come up and do germinate, then those ones are the ones that you can be saving back year after year, and you'll be improving your germination rates. This is also just a great way to look at flower pictures that we've taken over time. But you can see these are some of these species that are out there that we don't need to go to the store to collect. I mean, it's great going to the nursery. I'm not trying to take away anything from that. I mean, there's even people that are growing seed in North Pole that are all some of these same varieties of our native plants. And so I would never want to take away from that. But as for us individuals, we love to go out in the nature. We love to harvest. We love to see these things. We have favorite plants in the forest. And this is a great way to take a piece of that with us without harming the native population. So with that, I'm just going to say thank you very much. I'd love to talk to you some more about harvesting native plant seeds, and if there's any questions for cold stratification or how to prepare them, there's more to it, but I had 20 minutes. So there's the email. I'll be in the back. I'm over at the Forest Service. Come talk to me. So thank you very much.